US should attempt to disarm Russians in Syria, Brzezinski. US foreign policy expert Zbigniew Brzezinski says the United States should retaliate if Russia does not stop bombing its assets in Syria. Talk about Dr. Evil himself. Look at him. You wouldn't leave him alone with your kids, would you? Maybe David Icke was right, because this guy looks a heck of a lot more reptilian than he does human. But this man is the man who bragged that he helped create Al-Qaeda to fight the Russians in Afghanistan. And he is responsible for untold millions of deaths. He also said more recently that it's infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control them.
That for the first time in human history, for the first time in all of human history, almost all of mankind is politically awake. And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control.
He should know he is the man who virtually wrote the playbook for world domination. And I'm guessing that Brzezinski was quite good pals with Osama bin Laden back in the day, because bin Laden worked for him. But here he is, Dr. Evil, quite casually saying that the US should start shooting down Russian planes because the Russian planes are bombing their American assets. By assets, he doesn't mean buildings and lakes, he means terrorists. Russia are bombing the Western, i.e. American, created, armed, funded and trained by the CIA terrorists. John McCain said the same thing the other day on Fox News.
They are attacking the very guys who we want to see topple Assad. You would let American planes just continue to pass them and let them do that?
No, but I might do what we did in Afghanistan many years ago to give those guys the ability to shoot down those planes. That equipment is available.
Who would be shooting them down?
The Free Syrian Army, just like the Afghans shot down the Russian. No, just like the Afghans shot down Russian planes after Russia invaded Afghanistan. But a Russian general show up at our embassy in Baghdad an hour before it starts. And what's the first target? The people we are supporting and arming and training and equipment.
But this article goes on. Brzezinski, the national security advisor for former President Jimmy Carter, advised President Barack Obama to attempt to disarm the Russians if they kept attacking the CIA-trained militants in Syria. The Russians' naval and air presence in Syria are vulnerable, isolated geographically from their homeland, Brzezinski wrote in an article published for the Financial Times on Sunday. They could be disarmed if they persist in provoking the US. By disarming, he means destroyed, killed. Such an act would surely start a string of events that would inevitably lead to World War III. So what Dr. Evil is actually saying when he says this in this article, we have to stop these bloody Russians because they are killing the Al-Qaeda terrorists we hired to take out Assad. Putin has made us look like fools because we have had to admit that this is the case, that we have been arming, funding and training Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria. It's now all over the news that we are funding these terrorists in Syria. We need to put Putin in his place, shoot down his planes to stop him. This may cause World War III, but we are ready for him. We must take out Syria. The Rothschilds demand it. The West really have funded, armed and trained what was Al-Qaeda and put them into Syria, changed their name to ISIS to oust Assad. But it isn't working because Russia are attacking the American assets. Reports even say that China are heading to Syria as well as Iran. And now Michael Fallon, in his infinite wisdom, says we're going to put troops long-term in the Baltics, obviously as a threat to Russia. This could really kick off. David Cameron went on about Osama bin Laden in his conference speech the other day, but what you have to remember is that wanting Russia to stop the bombing in Syria, as Cameron, Obama, Brzezinski, NATO, France, and God knows how many others have called for, well, if these people get what they want and Russia stop bombing in Syria, they are helping the very terrorists that attacked America on 9/11 and the very terrorists that attacked London on 7/7. Think about that. Who's the real security threat in the UK? Warmonger, terrorist supporting Cameron, or world peace wanting Corbyn? Surely an X Factor watcher can work that one out.